No high school certificate, and all equipment is worthless. Johnson, the second-generation president of Northside Machinery, told me, "We have no salary for you, so you're fired." But as the person in charge of this company's most vital machine, it's evident what will happen if he fires me. Who is going to keep that machine maintained? We're not going to use that whole piece of junk anymore, so we don't need you. I'm quite attached to this business. I stayed on staff because of this, even when the president changed and inadvertent changes kept occurring. But I finally had enough of his despotism and chose to step down. A $10 million apparatus malfunctioned. Make the necessary corrections right away. I created it, but no can do because I don't like you. Unfortunately, when the machine broke down the following day, Johnson called me in tears. But I will not pardon him for taking advantage of Northside Machinery, which I, President Christopher, established until now. I was only satisfied when I heard his terrified voice on the other end of the telephone. I am 63-year-old Samuel. I am a regular employee of Northside Machinery, where I make machine parts. I've always liked playing around with machines, therefore my work, which is largely involved in the production of machinery, was my calling. I still do it for that reason, even though I'm 63 years old. Actually, I only completed middle school, and I can't say I'm socially proud of my job. That being said, I am able to work without feeling bad about my educational history because of Northside Machinery and Christopher, the company's founder. I stopped attending classes in the midst of high school because I was having relationship problems. I lost all motivation to go, so I stayed home and fiddled with machines, taking apart parts and screwdrivers. Even though I knew this couldn't continue, I was unable to motivate myself to return to school. 2 years my senior, Christopher, was the one who contacted me. He had protected me during middle and primary school. Then, he invited me to join his company when I turned 22. I'm considering launching a company. You're competent with machinery, correct? Would you like to work for me? But I didn't even graduate from high school. Your level of education is irrelevant. I am aware of your diligence and skill at assembling machines. Even searching among recent college graduates, I couldn't find someone more ideal. What say you then? At that point, I found it difficult to think about returning to high school or college, and I was concerned about how I would find employment in such an environment. I was pleased to be approached and valued by Christopher, so I took the decision to work hard for him and join the business he was about to launch. That's how Northside Machinery was founded by Christopher and me. Since you are more knowledgeable about machines than I am, Samuel, please let me know if you see anything. I will do my best to honor your viewpoint. He trusted me enough to grant me considerable latitude in terms of growth and production. Even though I was under a lot of strain, I knew a lot about the manufacturing of machinery. As a result, compared to other employees, I could see what needed to be done at this company more clearly. In reality, I want to construct a processing machine. We could boost earnings and streamline production with a machine like that. I see, but can we build such a machine? It will take time, but I'll make it with the employees during our free time. Are you truly capable of that? I understand. Tell me if you require any supplies or equipment. I am depending upon you. Following that, I created a processing machine. We took our time, working with the staff, and built it. The operations of Northside Machinery were centered around the processing equipment. That's incredible, Samuel. I'm so happy I found you. I'm grateful, Christopher. You put your trust in me, so I felt obligated to earn it by working hard. Christopher was ecstatic to hear that the processing machine was finished. I only completed middle school, yet he still reached out to me because he trusted me. I believe I was able to pay him back. Naturally, the machine wasn't flawless right away, but I fixed any problems and added features as needed. Northside Machinery's earnings grew steadily as the machine's processing efficiency increased. We kept using that machine to collaborate for the next 40 years, but we both got older. Christopher made the decision to step down as president at the age of 65, saying, "It's about time to pass the presidency to the next employee." It seemed expected, given his age. I had to say goodbye to Christopher with some reluctance when his retirement day came. Richard Johnson, a guy in his 40s, succeeded Christopher as the second president after he retired. Christopher had proposed that I run for the next president, but I turned him down because I felt it would be too much. I will now serve as Northside Machinery's president. I refuse to put up with slackers. Work diligently, everyone. The staff laughed at his haughty greeting. Why is that mentality there? I'm the new president. Let's celebrate. When they heard him speak, the staff grudgingly clapped. Then Johnson grinned triumphantly, clearly satisfied. Johnson was the department's first head of sales. His excellent sales record and amiable disposition led to his selection as the new president. But it was evident from this greeting that his amiability toward superiors was only a ruse to further his career. Johnson went on, "Even with the employees' growing mistrust, I won't accept the same lax management as previously. Put in a lot of effort during business hours and help the company make money. Save all of your money. We can't afford to pay for your idleness." Is it really necessary to say that in the first greeting? The staff members had to nod in agreement without giving it any thought. Christopher had retired, but they might report his true character to him. He is no longer a reliable source. For the time being, we have to figure out how to maintain Northside Machinery on our own. Johnson was our first boss when we started. Naturally, the first thing Johnson attacked with his pathetic greeting was our pay. Don't you think the pay is too high? Do you truly produce enough work to warrant this amount? It is not necessary to offer such a large bonus. Come on, let's chop it. How come? That presents a challenge. It was intolerable to have their bonuses and pay abruptly reduced. Johnson ignored the protests of one of the employees. Johnson also screamed at staff members for unimportant things. Who turned on this light? I instructed you to switch it off right away after using it. Under such strain, the staff could only say, "I'm sorry," again and time again. I'd instructed you to use the least amount of materials possible. Who removed everything? Well, to work efficiently, we need this much. It doesn't concern me. Take charge of efficiency on your own. Don't let the business's expenses go to waste. Yes, the staff members were worn out over time due to the continual ranting for little stuff. Excuse me, President Johnson, this tool broke, and I need to replace it. What? It cracked? Samuel, it had to have been your fault. Accept responsibility and get a replacement on your own. Since we had to pay for repairs out of our own wallets, we were unable to obtain replacements for damaged tools. No one was reporting broken goods these days. By concealing these problems, the staff was able to continue working, but ultimately the primary processing unit failed. Hey, why isn't work getting done? You had better not be taking it easy. No, this machine stopped working. What? Up until today, it was functioning. It must have been broken by someone. The workers appeared on the verge of tears, terrified they would be held accountable. The development of this gadget cost $10 million. It would be awful if we had to pay for it. When I saw how serious things were, I hurried over. President Johnson, allow me to examine this. Since I created this machine, I am the one who can identify the potential issue. I quickly identified the malfunctioning component, made the necessary adjustments, and rectified it. This should work now. The machine had been absolutely silent previously, but it began to function again when we ran a test run. That is accurate. Many thanks for it. The staff members appeared incredibly relieved. Hey, what's wrong with this device? If it breaks down that quickly, it's a worthless item. It's had 40 years of use. I've been adjusting it to keep it going because it's very worn out. I was honest when I described the machine's state. I intended to direct the discussion toward changing out components or proposing a new apparatus. Johnson, though, misinterpreted what I said. What? You're in charge of keeping it up. Then you were to blame for the machine's malfunction. This machine has been there for a while, but it was still functional up until this point, right? You must have done shoddy maintenance if it stopped. I wanted to pull my hair out because I couldn't get through to him. I've been doing my hardest to maintain it, but some pieces are beyond repair due to wear and tear over time. We need new parts in order to keep it operating more dependably. Not at all. I'm not purchasing any new components. Why should I invest money on an equipment this outdated? President Johnson, the argument that just because something has worked so far doesn't mean it will continue to work. He has to be adaptable in his decision-making as president. But Johnson doesn't have that viewpoint. It's obvious he views Northside machinery merely as a means of generating revenue. Anyway, take better care of it going forward. If it malfunctions once more, I'll charge you for the repairs. Your careless labor eventually impacts the revenues of the organization as well as other employees. Samuel, it's only natural. Total accountability. Perform your duties correctly. Johnson turned to leave after that. I talked to the staff while I watched him go. Thank you, Samuel. There is absolutely no issue. However, since Johnson took office, things have become more difficult. That is accurate. This gadget is aged, as anyone can see. Since I created this processing machine, I take great pride in it and never skimp on maintenance. But after 40 years of use, several sections of the equipment are beyond repair with routine maintenance. Nevertheless, I'll just have to put up with it for the benefit of this company. Christopher and I built Northside machinery. I don't want it to collapse or go into decay because of this. I put up with Johnson's despotism in order to keep the business safe. Looks like you're working hard on the maintenance. It had been a week since my conversation with Johnson. The equipment had not broken down yet since I had been extremely cautious with the upkeep. But it was only a question of time. If parts weren't replaced, the machine will malfunction very soon. Also, there's something I need to tell you today. What is it? Old tools are trash, and I don't have a high school degree. You're fired because we don't have any money for you. What? I was taken aback when I received an unexpected notice. But firing me so suddenly. The president made this choice. You will comply, of course. But if I leave, who will maintain that machine? We're not going to use that old piece of junk anymore, so we don't need you. I had no reply to that. Despite my distaste for Johnson, I felt compelled to stay because of the machine. You're merely a middle school graduate, by the way. I see why you're so illiterate. You can't comprehend my way of thinking because of this. I became enraged at his remarks and retaliated violently. I am indeed a high school dropout, but I have contributed to this company all this time. Stop being so hot. I labeled you a dropout. Are you offended? You have been trying to hide your lack of education, but that will not work with me as president. I'm not fooled by you. Johnson's voice was arrogant. The reason the machines keep breaking down is that there is a dropout maintaining them. It makes sense. Well, the issue is resolved by terminating you. As soon as I heard Johnson's words, I became furious. I wanted business as usual at Northside Machinery. I had put up with Johnson's tyranny for so long because of this. But this is not the Northside Machinery I knew as a child. I've fully lost interest in this company, and I've accepted the notice of termination. Comprehensive. I'm going to step down. Yes, leave now. It is a waste of money to pay you. Observing this significant enterprise being destroyed is exasperating. Without me, it will be disastrous, but I don't give a damn anymore. I made the decision to quit the company because I could stand it no longer. Frustrated, I packed up my personal items and headed home. My family was taken aback by my rage, but I assured them it was little. After doing the bare minimum of chores, I went to bed because it was late. Still, I have little doubt Johnson will come to regret my dismissal. My phone rang the day after I retired when I was taking a nap in bed. Johnson's name came up on the screen, which was to be expected. What could he want now that he'd dismissed me? With this thought in mind, I took the call. Hello. The $10 million apparatus isn't working. Without even saying hello, his first words were, "Fix it immediately." The processing machine appeared to have malfunctioned. It broke the day after I retired, which was when I had assumed it may happen at any time. What's this about the machine costing $10 million to develop? Johnson asked in a worried voice. Furthermore, I'm unable to locate another device anywhere that has the same features. There is no way to replace it. Why didn't you inform me earlier? Considering your demeanor, I assumed you had already made plans to replace it. Despite your degree, did you really not think about what would happen when you fired me? No. He must not have considered how to replace the machine because he was too busy counting money and making the staff work. Such ineptitude is not befitting of the presidency. Since we can't replace it, I attempted to get someone else to perform the maintenance, but nobody is familiar with how it operates. Everyone insisted that only you could manage it, even after I gave them the order to correct it. That's right. Is it accurate to say you created that device? Come fix it responsibly if that's the case. I developed it, but no can do since I don't like you. Unfortunately. I co-founded Northside Machinery with Christopher, and he destroyed it for financial gain. That's why I hate Johnson. I can't forgive him for it. Naturally, I won't assist him at this time. Avoid saying that. The date for delivery is drawing near. In addition to having to pay a penalty fee and apologize to the client if the machine breaks down. Can't you pay it with all the savings you forced on the employees? Obviously not. You can't just turn around and leave. I'll hold you liable for the damages if you decline to assist. Make an effort if you can. I did not damage the device. Actually, I've been trying to fix it the entire time, but you won't replace the parts. Who is to blame for the machine going down is obvious. Furthermore, as I have already resigned, I am no longer in charge of maintaining it. Johnson, perhaps recognizing I had a point, didn't counter-argument. I bet the guy on the other end of the line is gnashing his teeth. I wish you had purchased the parts at that time. But you argued that I was solely to blame. I'll never forget your treatment to me. All right, I'll get the parts right now, so please return. I won't, I promise. I detest you. Do you know how it felt for us to work for you? Damn you, bastard with no heart. You haven't worked for this company for very long, have you? Are you not attached to it in any way? Yes, I do feel a connection to this. I put a lot of effort into running the business under Johnson because of this. But because of him, even that emotion is no longer present. Northside Machinery is a complete disaster because of you. I no longer feel any connection to this company. Farewell. I hung up, figuring there was no use in listening any longer. I proceeded to block calls coming from Johnson and Northside Machinery. I felt a great sense of relief after telling Johnson all I wanted to say. I then conducted phone interviews with former staff members regarding the business and Johnson. There's no need for us to stay either, especially since you were fired and the company is in such disarray. All of the workers are turning in their letters of resignation. The expressions on their faces are priceless. Everyone appears to be quite relieved. Is that so? He had been at Northside Machinery for about 20 years, working in accounting. Everyone persevered for the good of the organization, feeling obligated to President Christopher. However, after I was let go, they lost patience with me. I was the one keeping the business afloat. It was true, and hearing this embarrassed me a little, that Christopher and I founded the business. Being trusted by the staff made me feel proud as well. President Johnson attempted to place the blame on us after the machine broke down. It's absurd. It's obvious that he fired you. No matter how loud he yells, the machine won't be fixed. Actually, All would have been well had he just spent a bit more on the equipment and workspace. However, he was always doing pointless things. Yes, without a doubt. Yes, the findings of the probe are in. I'll send them to you via email. Thanks, I appreciate it. The email containing the findings of the investigation arrived later. I smirked as I looked over the paperwork. Johnson wouldn't be able to wriggle out with this much evidence. I unblocked his number after doing the required steps. Johnson gave me another call a few days later. He must have known he was blocked because he kept attempting to contact. He was so determined to get in touch with me that he continued to do so even after I told him how much I despised him. Johnson yelled at me as soon as the connection connected, "Hey, Samuel. Have you not been returning my calls?" "Obviously. What's the point of my answering your calls?" "Samuel, you invented the device. Accountability all the way to the finish." "Obviously, I was interested in finishing it. But there was no need for me to mindlessly fulfill my tasks if Johnson couldn't respect the machine or me. Given its state of disarray, what use does Northside Machinery have to continue operating? We can't make delivery deadlines because of your resignation. The machine broke down, we have penalty fees to pay, and staff members are leaving. It's a catastrophe. Make it right." "I'm not to blame for that." "You're to blame for it," he shot back. "What did you say?" I'd inquired. I used the chance to clarify when I realized he was still confused. "I'd informed you that new parts were required because the equipment was aging. Did you decline to purchase them?" "Well, but it's not just that. You wrongfully sacked me and reduced my pay and incentives. It seems sense that the staff are leaving because they are afraid." He was unable to refute anything I said, so he remained silent. People are more than simply tools. They liked this company and trusted Chris Chopper. Therefore, that's why they worked here. After being abused because of your money-making plans, did you really believe they would stay? But I am the head of state. Naturally, I am free to manage this business any way I see fit. Do you have any idea how hard I had to work to get this job?" He retaliated. It was impressive that he was so determined to become president, but it didn't matter to us. To be honest, I was enraged with him for damaging the business. "Did you really think I'd unblock you for no reason?" "What do you mean?" "I'd wanted to share with you something. Knowing you would call, I unblocked you, and you walked straight into my trap. You have been embezzling money from Northside Machinery, and I have proof of this. The police will be coming for you shortly because I've already reported it to them. You had better accept that." "What?" Johnson, on the other end of the line, must have been wide-eyed. "Misappropriation. That can't possibly be real. And you've already reported it." "You're correct. I've told them about your transgressions. Embezzlement is a grave transgression. You will soon be visited by the police, and you will be held accountable." On the other end, Johnson was losing his mind. My charge had struck the mark. "How did you discover this? How did you carry out your research?" "I asked the accountant to investigate any questionable financial transactions. It appears that you took out substantial quantities of money on several occasions. It's not surprising, considering your regular fixation with money." Johnson had reduced incentives and pay, made workers save excessive amounts of money, and refused to update necessary equipment and tools. The idea of any money escaping his grasp was intolerable to him. "I have the office of president. I am free to spend corporate funds any way I see fit. To accuse me of embezzlement is absurd. Even a president will face penalties if they misuse company funds, and the punishment is much harsher than for a regular employee." My remarks seemed to make him shrink. "What sort of penalty? Will making a financial payment make things better?" "A president faces a prison sentence for significant embezzlement. You're going to jail then. While you can, savor your delicious food." "No way." I was cornered and reaping the consequences of Johnson's actions, considering how oppressive he had been against me. It was so nice to feel his worry over the phone. "Please forgive me, Samuel. Come on. I'll pay back the bonuses and salaries. I will even swap out the machine components. Is it not what you desired? When Johnson finally realized how bad things were, he started to change his attitude. Tell the staff that I'll make things right and request that they continue working as usual. If not, we're pretty well screwed. Even if you say that, I've already reported it to the police. Tell them it was an error when you call them back. So I won't be punished. Is that correct? Do you really believe it's that easy? Now that I've given the police proof of your embezzlement, there's no use in trying to get the report taken down. Conversely, I would just be charged as an accomplice. Please, Samuel. This time, I'll rehire you and promote you to manager. Isn't it a good deal? Johnson begged me, saying there was nothing left to do. We can claim the report was incorrect, the machine will be rectified, and business will restart if you return. All of the staff members will be back. Everything will be resolved. I beg you. He would most likely be pleading for forgiveness on his hands and knees if he were in front of me. I wish I could have seen it on the phone. All right, I'll come back if you pay me a higher salary than before. Oh, really? To what extent do you wish? Decide on a price. He most likely believed that it was a little price to pay to get things straightened out. His wallets must be rather full considering how much he embezzled. However, I informed him $100,000. What? $100,000 every single month? Could you please give me that money? Johnson had to be absolutely astounded by the pay I was demanding. For a man in his 60s, $100,000 a month was an absurd sum. That is really crazy. Do you actually earn that much money? You're lying to try to hurt me. You're not as frugal as I am. I'm telling the truth. I wouldn't lie about anything like this, even if the other person is a criminal. Observing his perplexity, I clarified. I've always enjoyed creating things, even as a little child. I've created a lot of things on my own over the years and patented them. My monthly income from that source is $100,000. Not at all. Someone earning $100,000 who graduated from middle school like you. That was probably a sum worth committing crimes for, to hear him tell it. But I earned it the right way. It seemed to hit him hard to face this fact. I never gave patents a second thought until Christopher made the suggestion. Before I applied, I had no idea how valuable my developments were. My inventions are currently used by numerous manufacturing companies. That allows me to properly care for my family. I questioned Johnson, so, can you pay it? After noticing that he was shook up. Oh my God, $100,000. But I'll lose money if I pay that much. Johnson believed that if I went back to Northside Machinery, the problem would be resolved. But he couldn't bear having to pay me more than $100,000 a month. I think he was split between receiving the punishment and going into debt to pay me. If you can't pay, then this conversation is over. Hold on. How come? Are you able to pay for it? Johnson begged. If you come back. I gave him a hard reality check, but he must have understood he had no choice but to pay. No matter how much money you offer, I'm not coming back, Samuel, I said. At what I said, Care Johnson lost all words. He must have felt completely helpless, with no way out. I was startled by a loud noise coming from the other end of the call. Then a voice out of nowhere answered. This is law enforcement. Are you Richard Johnson? Wait, I didn't do anything. I let out a cry. You might be charged with embezzlement. Kindly accompany us to the station. No, I didn't steal any property. Since I'm the president, using business funds comes naturally to me. His shouts were audible to me from the other side, but they soon stopped. He would undoubtedly now receive the just punishment. I smirked and hung up the phone as soon as I heard his voice being taken away. Following the resignation of every employee and the severing of business relations, Northside Machinery filed for bankruptcy. Johnson was accused of severe breach of trust for embezzling corporate funds while serving as president. He incited the company's bankruptcy, induced the resignation of every employee, and embezzled $300,000 in a short amount of time. As a result, he was found guilty and given a sentence that included an $80,000 fine and 7 years in prison. Moreover, because the actual damages were caused by the stoppage of transactions, several additional companies claimed a total of $100,000 in compensation. He insisted repeatedly in court that he was not at fault, yet forcing a business into bankruptcy for personal gain is a serious offense. He'll spend time in prison for his crime of destroying the firm we loved so dearly. I didn't realize things had gotten so awful. I apologize for not noticing, I uttered. No, Christopher, I didn't tell you because I didn't want to bother you, he answered. I should be the one to apologize for allowing it to get to this point. Apologize not. I take some of the blame for not selecting a more deserving replacement. This was bound to happen. Everything has a start and a finish. In any case, it's fortunate that Johnson received the just punishment for taking advantage of our business, Christopher reminisced. I reasoned that closing the business wouldn't be a bad idea after I retired. There's no one else I trust enough to take over, and neither my son nor daughter want to run it. It's best to conclude things amicably rather than going in circles, because you also stated that you have no interest in managing. This circumstance has demonstrated that this was the best decision. That is accurate. Given the age of the business I founded, now might be the ideal time. Exactly. I don't see this as a bad thing because of this. Even now, I feel relieved. It sounds good to take it easy and spend time with my family and you. We established a company, created machines, and put in a lot of effort for 40 years. It's a little disappointing to end it here, but there are instances when it's better to draw a conclusion than to go on indefinitely. This particular example amply demonstrated that. I never had trouble making ends meet. I just loved working with machines and the company I kept. Thanks to Christopher's advice, I have enough savings to support my family comfortably and indulge in my interests. I'll thus start doing machine tinkering as a hobby and enjoy relaxing with my friends and family. What? What is this? My darling daughter is being married today. Upon entering the reception hall and finding my designated seat, I discovered a talisman and a pile of salt that were totally out of place for a wedding. I was unable to comprehend what was taking place. The groom smirked as he walked up to me, as I stood there bewildered. A factory worker for a father. He struggled to contain his laughing, obviously finding this situation hilarious, and continued, "That's nothing but a disgrace to the family." I was so furious that my mind went blank. At that moment, my daughter, who was getting married, approached me and said, "Dad, let's go home." She grabbed my hand and headed for the door. Thomas is my name. I work at a factory and am 58 years old. My daughter is 27 years old. She's bringing her fiancé around today so I can meet him. I therefore got up early to clean the house, even though it was my day off. All good. I've aired out the space and cleaned the entryway. I should now prepare the tea so I can serve it immediately. I've been restless all morning because today is the first time my daughter's boyfriend is coming to visit. Maybe I should wear something in a brighter color. The doorbell rang as I looked at my entire image in the entrance mirror. I forced myself to be cool and opened the door, suppressing my anxious excitement. "Hi, welcome. I appreciate you coming." I pumped my fist in my head, thinking I had perfected the amiable dad persona. "Dad, sorry for making you do all this on your day off," remarked Emily. I couldn't help but smile when I saw my daughter, who lives alone, looking happy and healthy after all this time. A tall, well-groomed young man stood next to her. "It's good to meet you. My name is Brian. Emily and I are dating." Emily gave him a hesitant grin as she looked up. "The place is a bit messy, but please come in." Emily led them into the living room, where I had done a lot of cleaning, and then she went to the kitchen to make tea. "So, What is the duration of your relationship with Emily? She never truly discusses these topics with me. Almost 2 years have passed. I knew she was the person I wanted to marry as soon as we began dating. I was relieved to hear his courteous voice and to feel his friendly disposition. He must be a decent man if I will allow my beloved daughter to get married. Brian has made a respectable impact thus far. What are you two talking about? Emily sat down next to Brian, pouting as though she felt excluded, and carried a tray filled with coffee. Hi, Emily. He strikes me as a very good man. You've discovered a decent individual. Emily smiled proudly at what I said. All right. In times of need, he is dependable and incredibly caring. I understand. That's comforting. What is your occupation, by the way, Brian? I work as an internist at a general hospital. As soon as I heard his line of work, I thought of an old friend. In relation to it, my friend was also a doctor. You're a doctor. I see. It's a commendable career. Brian smiled modestly. He works at Street Clare Hospital. What? Street Clare Hospital. I recognized the name and thought of a potential. That's correct. Is there a problem? They both gave me a questioning glance, but I dismissed it. No, it's nothing. Anyway, you two haven't had lunch yet, have you? Let's order some food. A new restaurant opened nearby, and it's really good. Even though this was just an introduction, it was still a celebratory occasion. So I decided to treat them to Emily's favorite dish. Wow, that was delicious. By the time we finished eating, the initial tension had eased, and Brian and I were chatting more comfortably. Dad? Suddenly, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. What is it? You're being so formal all of a sudden. I had a feeling I knew where this was going, but I played along. Dad, thank you for raising me all these years. Emily turned to Brian. Brian, I haven't told you this yet, but actually, Dad and I aren't related by blood. Brian was momentarily stunned by Emily's revelation. Emily is my best friend's daughter, I explained. Your best friend? Then, Emily's biological parents were? Her real parents passed away in an accident when she was 4. She was about to be placed in an institution, and I couldn't stand by and watch, so I took her in. At such a young age, that must have been tough for you two. Are you married? At his question, I shook my head. I was a carefree bachelor with no intention of marrying, and then suddenly I found myself raising a young child. Every day felt like a battle. As I reminisced about those days, Brian turned to me with another question. What kind of work do you do? Me? I work at a factory. Huh. You work at a factory. When I replied, yes, I do, I couldn't help but notice a slight change in Brian's expression. It might have been my imagination, but he seemed less cheerful. We continued making small talk, but I noticed Emily glancing at the clock repeatedly. What's wrong, Emily? You've been checking the time a lot. Well, actually, we have a meeting at the wedding venue today. I was just thinking we should probably get going soon. Brian apologized with a slightly guilty expression. Sorry for the rush. I packed too many plans into today, even though it's my day off. Don't worry about it. Doctors have busy schedules, so it's understandable. Emily urged Brian to stand up, signaling that it was time to leave. All right, Dad. The wedding is in 3 months. Take care of yourself. Thank you for taking the time to meet us today. We'll see you at the wedding venue in 3 months. With that, the two of them left in a hurry. Now, the reality of my daughter getting married finally started to sink in. As I looked around the house, which had fallen completely silent, I felt a small pang of loneliness, even though this should be a joyful occasion. 3 months later, the long-awaited wedding day had arrived. The formal wear I was wearing was actually borrowed from a coworker who had tailored it 6 months ago for his son's wedding. I had been too restless the day before, so I finished work early and got a haircut. Can't have the father of the bride looking unkempt. I rubbed my freshly shaved chin in an effort to look more presentable. I even had my beard shaved off. I can't let Emily feel embarrassed because of me. As I checked myself in the full-length mirror by the entrance, I heard the sound of an engine outside. As I stepped outside and got into the taxi Emily had arranged for me, the driver asked, "Whose wedding is it today?" "Actually, it's my daughter's wedding." His voice immediately brightened. "Oh, you're the father of the bride. Congratulations." As we chatted, I learned that his daughter had also just gotten married last month. A wedding is such a wonderful event. After all, it's the big day for the daughter you raised with so much love. You better prepare to shed a lot of tears. Before I knew it, we had arrived at the venue. Hearing the driver's words made me look forward to the ceremony even more. As I entered the venue, one of the staff members greeted me with a cheerful congratulations. After letting them know I was the father of the bride, I was escorted to a room labeled Family Waiting Room. "Hello, I'm Emily's father," I introduced myself as I stepped inside. But the groom's family only gave me a brief glance before returning to their conversation. Since I was the only one representing Emily's side, I couldn't help but feel out of place. "Before the ceremony begins, please take this time to introduce both families to each other," the staff member said with a bright smile, completely unfazed by the tense atmosphere in the room. Then, a middle-aged man with a dignified presence stepped forward to speak. "Nice to meet you. I'm Brian's father, Richard, and this is my wife, Susan. We are both doctors, as you may know, and our son Brian also works as an internist at a hospital." It turned out that Brian's entire family was made up of doctors. Through Richard's introductions, I learned that there were also dentists and university professors among their relatives. It was clear that they lived in a completely different world from mine. Once they finished their introductions, it was my turn to speak. "I'm Emily's father. I don't have a wife. I've been working in a factory while raising her on my own. Please take care of my daughter." I bowed my head as I spoke. However, the reaction from Brian's family was far from welcoming. When I lifted my head, I saw Brian's parents looking at me with cold, disapproving eyes. They must have had their thoughts about my occupation and the fact that I was a single father. But I couldn't let anything tarnish my daughter's once-in-a-lifetime wedding day, so I forced a polite smile. This kind of man is her father. I saw Susan glance at me before whispering something to Richard. The other relatives were also murmuring among themselves, though I couldn't quite make out what they were saying. Honestly, it didn't feel great, but for Emily's sake, I had no choice but to endure it. With a heavy atmosphere lingering, the family introductions came to an end. "Now it's time to move to the ceremony hall," a staff member announced with a bright smile, as if trying to dispel the tension in the room. Relieved, I quickly left the waiting room. I just had to endure this a little longer. I entered the chapel and took my assigned seat. Normally, the father walks the bride down the aisle, but Brian had requested that he and Emily enter together. I wasn't sure why, but apparently the plan had been changed at the last minute. Honestly, I was grateful. I wasn't sure I could keep myself from crying in front of everyone. Oh, the bride isn't walking in with her father. Is that normal these days? I heard Brian changed it at the last minute, but isn't it obvious? The father is, well, you know. From across the aisle, I heard whispered comments from the groom's relatives. I tried to ignore them, lowering my gaze and waiting for the couple's entrance. A moment later, the officiant announced the start of the ceremony. The music began to play, and the chapel doors at the back opened. The bride and groom made their grand entrance. The room erupted in applause, and I felt a wave of emotion well up in my chest. Emily walked gracefully in her pure white wedding dress, and as I watched her, countless memories flooded back. The 4-year-old Emily crying at her parents' funeral. Back then, I had thought to myself, I have to make sure this child is happy. Dad, when I grow up, I'm going to marry you. When she was in elementary school, she used to say things like that, making me laugh. And now, here she was on her wedding day. I wiped my tears with my handkerchief over and over again. As Emily and Brian walked past me, Emily suddenly stopped. I wondered if something was wrong and looked up. Dad, I'm going to be happy. She gave me a bright smile before Brian gently urged her forward toward the altar. Emily looked more beautiful than I had ever seen her before. I was incredibly proud. The ceremony proceeded without issue, and once the couple had exited, the staff directed everyone to move to the reception hall. Emily looked absolutely stunning. I want to get married soon too. Is there anyone good out there? But hey, aren't all of Brian's friends doctors? Maybe we have a chance too. I overheard Emily's college friends chattering excitedly. Hearing their conversation reminded me of the sense of isolation I had felt earlier. I couldn't let Emily be embarrassed. Steeling myself, I headed toward the reception hall. At the entrance, I checked the seating chart I was given. Since I had no other family present, they had placed me among Brian's relatives, perhaps out of consideration. They didn't have to go that far. This is going to be uncomfortable. I sighed, but for Emily's sake, I convinced myself to deal with it and walked toward my seat. Once this reception was over, that was the thought running through my head when my eyes fell upon something completely out of place for a wedding. What is this? At my assigned seat, there was a small dish with a mound of salt and a talisman. I glanced around, but the other tables were set normally, ready for the meal to be served. What on earth was happening? My mind went blank. Hey, check that out. No way. Who was that guy? Didn't they mention it earlier? That's the bride's father. But why would they do something like that? Damn, this is hilarious. People were staring at me, confused by why I hadn't taken my seat. Some were whispering, their hushed voices filled with amusement. I had no idea what to do. I just stood there, frozen. Then, as if unable to contain his laughter any longer, Brian approached me with an expression of pure amusement. Brian, what kind of joke is this? I mean, come on. This is a wedding. This is seriously inappropriate. Or am I the one who's wrong here? I tried to keep my voice steady, but the confusion and frustration bled through. Brian could no longer hold it in. He burst out laughing. At the sound of his laughter, the groom's family, all seated at their tables, turned to look at us. I felt my face burning with humiliation. Then, with a cruel grin, Brian said, "A factory worker as the father of the bride? That's just embarrassing for the family." And then, once again, he laughed loudly. Around him, his relatives chuckled, snickering at my expense. So this was it. This was how much they looked down on me for being a factory worker. The realization filled me with a deep, searing anger. But since he was my daughter's fiancé, I held my tongue. Taking advantage of my silence, Brian continued pressing the issue. As you probably learned at the family introductions, all my relatives heir. He spoke loudly enough for everyone around to hear, smirking all the while. I was stunned. Was this really the man my daughter chose to marry? Having someone like you, a factory worker, among our guests would be humiliating if anyone found out. What are you saying? I couldn't grasp his intent and questioned him. Even after all this, you still don't get it. Brian scoffed. This is a problem. I didn't understand. What was he trying to make me do? As I stood there, confused, Brian leaned in and spoke as if explaining something to a child. I want you to leave before any of the guests realize who you are. Now do you understand? It felt like I had been struck in the head with a blunt object. What was he thinking? I was still the bride's father. I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the rage and humiliation threatening to boil over. Then, I asked him, "If you wanted me to leave, then why did you invite me to the wedding at all? You could have left me out from the start. Did you just want to humiliate me?" Brian, completely unfazed, replied smoothly, "Humiliate you? Not at all. Inviting you is my way of showing kindness." Kindness? I mean, it would have been cruel if you didn't even get to see your daughter's big day, right? But now that you've seen her in her dress, you can go. I was so utterly degraded that I could no longer even form words. Did he really think this was an act of generosity? I felt pathetic knowing that this was the man my daughter had chosen. Brian is right. I don't support including you in our family. Thomas Richard joined in, sneering down at me. Yes, I agree with my husband, his wife added. If at least you were a civil servant, we could have tolerated it. But a factory worker, that's simply too embarrassing to mention to others. Even his parents backed him up. I suddenly realized that the guests in the lobby were beginning to enter the reception hall. I wanted to attend the reception. I really did. But staying here any longer felt impossible. Thomas, do you still not understand? For today, please just leave. We've already wasted enough time on this nonsense. If I forced my way into the reception, I might end up making things worse. And if that happened, Emily could be the one they turn their ridicule on after the wedding. I couldn't let that happen. Swallowing my pride, I made up my mind to leave. With Brian and his parents glaring at me, I was about to walk out of the venue in defeat when I suddenly found myself face to face with my daughter. She had changed out of her wedding dress and was now standing in front of me in a casual outfit. "Emily, what's going on? Your dress." Still confused, I felt her take my hand. "Dad, let's go home." She gave me a sorrowful smile. "Emily, you." One of the venue staff told me they overheard Brian and his family saying awful things to you. Emily had found out what had happened, and she had come to stop it. Brian, now panicking, grabbed her by the shoulders. "Wait, Emily, this is a misunderstanding." He scrambled for an excuse. "A misunderstanding? Are you telling me you weren't ganging up on my dad and making fun of him? What kind of grown adults find joy in belittling someone like that? I can't be part of a family like this. Don't insult me." "Hey, Emily, don't get so worked up. It was just a little joke, right, Mom?" "Dad?" Emily's anger flared even more. She shoved Brian's hands off her shoulders. "A joke? You think humiliating someone like that is funny? You have no sense of decency, and you call yourselves doctors. This just proves I would never be happy marrying you. No way. Come on, I'll apologize. Please don't tell me you're calling off the wedding, Emily." Brian was now desperate, clinging to Emily, but she pushed him away. "All you ever care about is your reputation. I will only marry someone who respects my father." "Emily, you..." I felt my eyes well up. "Emily, you don't have to be so dramatic, right?" Susan tried to mediate, looking flustered. But Emily shot her a cold glance and spoke firmly. "I'm divorcing Brian." Then she gripped my hand tighter and started walking toward the exit. "Wait, Emily, you can't be serious. The reception is about to start." "Hey." Behind us, Brian's frantic voice echoed, but Emily never looked back. "Emily, what are you doing? The reception is about to start, isn't it?" "I'm sorry, but the wedding is canceled. I appreciate you coming all this way." At the entrance, we ran into Emily's boss, who was understandably shocked. After all, the bride was walking out in casual clothes just before the reception. But after hearing Emily's explanation, he didn't scold her. Instead, he looked at us with sympathy. Once we stepped outside, I spotted a taxi and quickly flagged it down. We hurried inside. I stole. A glance behind us, but neither Brian nor his family had followed. I exhaled in relief. Hey, Emily. What is it, Dad? She looked exhausted, but I had to ask. Are you really okay with this? What do you mean? She played dumb, pretending not to understand. You wanted to marry Brian, didn't you? Emily smiled at me. I knew from the beginning that Brian didn't respect you. What? From the beginning. Didn't you notice? When we visited the house for introductions, I saw his expression change. The moment you mentioned you worked at a factory. That's when I realized he looked down on you. He's the kind of person who values status and career above all else. Her words made me recall the unease I had felt back then. It was true that his attitude toward me had noticeably shifted the moment I mentioned my job. You've known since then. I wasn't sure what to do. I knew his background, and I wondered if I should just go through with the marriage anyway. She let out a sigh. His background. It doesn't matter anymore. It's over. Her cryptic words intrigued me, but she didn't elaborate further. Instead, she looked me straight in the eye. But you know what, Dad? You raised me as if I were your real daughter, showering me with love and care. I want you to be happy too. Emily. I can't be with someone who doesn't respect the person who means the most to me. There's no need to marry a man like that. It was clear that, in her heart, she had already made up her mind. Nothing I said would change it. So my stubborn daughter had already decided. I felt a mix of emotions, gratitude that she valued me so much and guilt for being the reason. She had to make this painful choice. A few days after the canceled wedding, Emily moved back home from her apartment. Are you really moving back in, Emily? I asked my daughter, who had returned with a suitcase, full of provisions for a few nights' stay. Why do you keep asking? Look, the wedding's off, and I split the venue cancellation cost with Brian, so I don't have much money right now. I was planning to move out anyway after getting married, so I've already given up my apartment. I don't have anywhere else to go. That was true. She had already started the process of vacating her place, and by the end of the month, she would have to be completely moved out. Her workplace was still within commuting distance, so she didn't seem to mind. To be honest, I was happy to have my daughter living with me again. You know, Dad, that guy from the wedding. He's been treating me to lunch every day out of sympathy. I'm starting to feel bad about it. Emily said this lightheartedly, as if she had already moved on, but every now and then I caught glimpses of sadness in her eyes, and that worried me. One evening after dinner, I was watching TV in the living room while Emily, just back from work, was reheating her meal in the kitchen. The doorbell rang. Since the intercom monitor was right next to the kitchen, Emily instinctively checked it while muttering, "Who could it be at this hour? Our neighbors, maybe." "Emily, who is it?" I asked, sensing something was off. But she didn't respond, just stared at the screen in shock. "Who is coming by at this hour?" I grumbled and walked over to check. And there he was, Brian. Not just him. His parents were with him too. What was going on? What could they possibly want now? Emily and I exchanged bewildered looks. Ignoring them wasn't an option, so we decided to at least hear them out. When I opened the door, Brian was standing there with a completely different attitude from before. Humble and almost pitiful. "What do you want?" "We've already called off the wedding, and I've cut ties with you," Emily asked coldly. At her words, Brian turned pale and looked flustered. "Is something wrong? You seem to be acting strange." He was acting so strangely that I found myself asking out of concern. Then, to my shock, Brian looked at me, his eyes filled with desperation, and blurted out, "I had no idea you were involved in the development of that product." That product he was referring to, the remote surgical medical device. I had spent years working on. Technically, I worked in a factory, but I wasn't on the production line. I was a research developer specializing in medical machinery. Emily's biological father and I had been college classmates. He was in the medical faculty, and I was in engineering, but we had shared an apartment and become best friends. My decision to pursue medical technology was largely influenced by him. Thomas, my dream is to save lives using the machines you create. He had always been my greatest supporter. It was no wonder Brian was now in a panic. Yes, I was the lead developer on that project, but that was until recently. I stepped away from it a few days ago. Brian's eyes widened in shock. May I ask why? You should know the answer to that better than anyone. This is because of me, isn't it? He asked. I gave him a silent nod. Brian slumped, utterly dejected. If you hadn't treated me with such blatant disrespect, I wouldn't have done this. But even I have my limits. This is because I'm a doctor at Street Clare Hospital, isn't it? Brian asked hesitantly. You do know that without my expertise, not only is the development of that product impossible, but even its maintenance will be a challenge, right? His face turned even paler as he grabbed my arm in desperation. Please, what would it take for you to return to the project? The medical device I had developed was essential in surgical procedures. However, as an internist, Brian had little direct involvement with it. So why was he so desperate? Wait a second, Brian. You're an internist. This shouldn't directly impact your work. Why are you so panicked? Brian hesitated, avoiding my gaze. Because I'm actually part of that project. What? You are? You're aware that the project is led by Dr. Smith, the hospital director, right? I nodded, and he continued. He was a guest at my wedding. Later, I found out that he was looking forward to meeting you. Once he learned you were my future father-in-law. Ah, yes. It's been a while since I last saw him. Brian swallowed hard. And then, after the wedding fell apart, I had to explain to him what happened. His voice grew weaker, filled with regret. He was furious when he found out what I had done. He told me, "How could you do something so foolish? I didn't know who you really were. You just said you worked at a factory." His voice trailed off as he let out a deep sigh. "So you're here now because Dr. Smith scolded you, and you want to make amends. You sound like a child." Brian flinched at my words and tried to argue. You don't have to put it that way. But it's the truth, isn't it? He had no response, simply looking frustrated and defeated. But more than that, I was blamed for you leaving the project, Brian muttered, his shoulders slumping in defeat. The confidence he once had was completely gone. Emily watched him in silence, biting her lip. I couldn't read her expression. Brian. At the sound of my voice, he jerked his head up, his eyes filled with a mix of desperation and expectation. I'll say this up front. I have no intention of ever associating with you again. Brian's eyes widened in shock. What? Why? Can't you forgive me? What about the project? I can't entrust my daughter to someone who judges people solely by their status. I know I was wrong. I deeply regret it, and I'll change. I let out a deep sigh. Even if you regret it now, who's to say you won't do something like this again in the future? I looked at him, his face full of disappointment. I worry about my daughter's future far more than you realize. Blood ties don't matter. I refuse to do anything that would dishonor her real parents. Brian visibly slumped, his shoulders sinking with resignation. After taking a deep breath, he began to speak in a slow, halting voice. It may be too late, but can you at least hear me out? His expression had changed. He looked troubled, like he had been holding something in for a long time. I raised an eyebrow. You still have something to say, Brian. Emily looked at him, concern in her voice, but he shook his head and continued. I decided to hear him out. As you know, both of my parents are doctors. My grandfather was also a doctor. My father's side of the family has been in medicine for generations. I'd initially thought he was just boasting, but his tone didn't carry any pride, only weariness. Because of that, from the moment I was old enough to understand, I was told I had no choice but to become a doctor. Of course, you're part of this family. There was never any other option, his mother interjected. Mother, please be quiet, Brian said sharply, making her expression stiffen. As you can probably guess, I became a doctor because my parents and relatives told me to. My own desires never factored into it. Ha! What nonsense, Richard scoffed. Father, be quiet, Brian said, raising his voice for the first time. Richard flinched in surprise. I did as they expected and became a doctor. But the truth is, I never really wanted to be one. Brian's face contorted with pain. He had probably wanted to say this for years. Brian, what are you talking about? Calm down. You're just upset, that's all, Susan said, attempting to soothe him. I'm completely calm, Mother, but you aren't. For years, I carried the crushing weight of your expectations. No matter how much I did, it was never enough. You expected excellence as a given. Do you have any idea how many times I wanted to quit? Brian, that must have been hard. With my words, Brian gave a small, bitter nod. But becoming a doctor wasn't enough. My parents made it clear that I had to accomplish even more after that. His face twisted in frustration. As an internist, my work doesn't bring the same prestige as a surgeon. No matter how many papers I published, it never seemed to matter, he continued, his voice heavy with regret. His parents looked at him with disapproval. That's why I joined Dr. Smith's project. I wanted to accomplish something significant. Most of the team was made up of surgeons, but I learned a lot and felt fulfilled for the first time. I see. That explains why we never met, I said. I mostly interacted with the surgeons when I visited the hospital. I had no idea you were involved in the same project. My apologies. I was just as surprised when Dr. Smith told me about you. I had no idea who you really were, and I treated you horribly. Brian, I understand now. You've had a difficult life. Brian nodded solemnly. But you know, blaming your upbringing can only take you so far. He looked down, face solemn. I can't deny that your circumstances pushed you toward that choice. I sympathize with that. Brian hesitated. Then does that mean? But at the end of the day, you were the one who made that choice, weren't you? Brian inhaled sharply and fell silent at my pointed remark. I struggled with my own choices for the future when I was younger, too, I admitted. You did. His question was laced with surprise. I chuckled, nodding. I graduated from a national university with a degree in engineering and started working for a major machinery manufacturer, though not the one I work for now. You went to a national university. Haha. I don't exactly look the part, do I? But let me continue. He nodded, still taking it in. I was working in industrial machinery development. But to be honest, it wasn't what I truly wanted to do, I reflected. So what was it that you really wanted to do? I wanted to develop medical devices. My parents passed away from illness when I was young. Nowadays, with advancements in medicine, early detection greatly increases survival rates. But back then, medical technology was far less advanced. I see. That's why I thought about what I, as someone who wasn't a doctor, could do. And the answer was clear. I wanted to build medical equipment. It was a simple reason. I wanted to create machines that could save lives with my own hands. Brian's parents listened to my story with clear disinterest, their expressions practically dripping with boredom. I ignored them and continued speaking to Brian. But at the time, It was the era of rapid industrial growth. The demand for industrial machinery was incredibly high, and companies were constantly pushing for new technological advancements in that field. I noticed that even Emily, who had never heard the full story before, was now listening intently, her expression serious. In contrast, there was almost no demand for medical equipment. Medicine was entirely reliant on the skill of doctors. The idea of machines assisting in treatment was something out of a science fiction story. I remembered how people used to mock me whenever I said I wanted to develop medical devices. The world's evaluation of what I wanted to do was unbearably low. But in the end, I still wanted to pursue medical equipment. So I quit the company I was working for at the time. What? You changed jobs? Yeah, but I didn't have another job lined up, so I just quit. I had to start by looking for a company that would let me do what I truly wanted. Brian looked surprised, as if he hadn't expected me to be that bold. If I had been alone back then, I probably would have stayed in the same company, stuck in a routine. What changed? There was someone who supported me, someone who pushed me forward. Someone. I glanced at Emily as I spoke. Her father, my best friend. He was the one who encouraged me, who gave me the push I needed. Thanks to him, I was able to refine my skills and challenge the world. I owe him everything. Emily's father. Brian looked puzzled, as if trying to understand the connection. Her biological father was an outstanding surgeon. Her mother was a dedicated nurse. Both of them were incredibly compassionate people. As I recalled them, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. What? Emily's father was a doctor. I never knew that. Well, I don't really remember much about my biological parents, Emily admitted. Even if someone tells me they were doctors, it doesn't really mean much to me. And now, the dad in front of me is my father. That's all that matters. She turned to me and smiled warmly. Because of him, I am who I am today. If I hadn't had the courage to follow my dream, I wouldn't have created the technology that has helped save so many lives. Stop running your mouth. Are you trying to manipulate my son with your sentimental stories? Suddenly, Richard, who had been quiet until then, came at me. Manipulate? What are you talking about? Don't you see what you've done? You've ruined my son's career. He was finally making a name for himself in that project. And now, thanks to you, it's all fallen apart. Susan joined in, her voice shrill. Yes, you humiliated Brian in front of everyone. How dare you? It's disgusting to think that someone like you is almost part of our family. Their furious accusations rained down on me. Enough. Both of you, just stop. Brian's outburst stunned Richard. What's gotten into you? You never saw me as your son, did you? I was just a tool to maintain your reputation, Brian said, lowering his gaze. His voice turned cold. What are you saying? That's not true. We only wanted what was best for your future, right, Richard? Susan clung to Richard's arm, her voice pleading. Yes, exactly. What nonsense are you talking about? Everything we did was for your future. They had never imagined that Brian would defy them. Now caught off guard, they scrambled to justify themselves. Rebelling against us like this? What's gotten into you, Brian? This isn't like you. And what exactly is like me, huh? Being the son who blindly obeys whatever you say. I knew it. This is all because of Emily. I had my doubts from the start. She's not right for you. You need someone more obedient, someone who knows her place. Anger flared up inside me at his words, but before I could speak, Brian beat me to it. Father, stop insulting Emily. What are you saying? You were never this defiant before. That woman has turned you against us. Mother, just be quiet. Brian silenced his mother with a firm tone. At his words, she visibly slumped, her shoulders dropping as she fell into silence. She is an incredible woman. I truly believe that meeting Emily changed my life. Brian looked at Emily, his eyes filled with emotion. If you continue to speak ill of her, I will never forgive you. What are you saying all of a sudden, Brian? That's right. This isn't like you. Come back to your senses and be the obedient son you always were. His parents were visibly shaken by his defiant attitude. Seeing their reaction, Brian made a firm declaration. Father, mother, thank you for raising me all these years. What are you talking about? Why are you saying that now? That's only natural because we're your parents. No. I just wanted to say it because this will be the last time. Last time? What are you talking about? I've decided to leave you both behind and live my own life. Wait, what do you mean by leave? You're both doctors, yet you're surprisingly slow to understand. Brian's words clearly rattled his parents. Susan looked flustered while Richard's face grew tense. I'm saying that from today onward, I am cutting ties with you both. We are no longer family. We are nothing more than strangers. What? That's absurd. You are our son. Take that back. Father, I have a heart of my own. I am not your puppet. What do you take me for? Enough already. If you understand, then don't ever show your faces again. With that, Brian grabbed both of his parents by the arms and forcefully pushed them out the door. He locked the entrance behind them. For a while, they pounded on the door and rang the intercom repeatedly, but eventually they gave up and left. Brian, feeling uneasy, lowered his head. I am truly sorry. Everything I told my parents applies to me as well. I regret my actions more than I can say. Brian, from now on, I will change and work hard to earn your approval. Brian looked at me with unwavering determination. For the first time, I saw a real sense of resolve in his eyes. When that time comes, please allow me to marry Emily again. I don't know how long it will take, but I will do whatever it takes. Please, I beg you. Brian, perhaps I was too harsh as well. I regret my actions. Wait, does that mean? I acted rashly by quitting the project in anger. But if I leave things as they are, it will only cause problems for the medical field. I'll return to the project. Tell Dr. Smith. Are you serious? Yes, and Brian, I'd appreciate it if you helped with the development as well. Of course. Thank you so much. And one more thing. Yes? I'd rather you call me Father. Wait, does that mean? I'm entrusting Emily to you. I think now, you are someone I can rely on. Thank you, Father, Dad, thank you. And so, I returned to the project. Brian worked alongside me in the development. Later, Emily and Brian got married. Emily, Brian, you don't have to come visit me on your days off. Spend some time as a couple. But I like coming here. Besides, Brian enjoys talking with you, and I love seeing you two getting along. I also find your research fascinating, Father. I'd love to hear more. They bought a house just 5 minutes from mine. They visit often, sharing meals with me as if, making sure I never feel lonely. And now, with Emily's due date approaching, I eagerly await the arrival of a new grandchild, looking forward to a lively and joyful future.